about how we know each other and also what you do. We met, I don't know, a decade ago?
Yep, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
the summer of 2015.
Okay. And why don't you give the whole story, how we met?
We met in the summer of 2015 because I was taking part in an accelerator program for social entrepreneurs in Boulder. So I spent the whole summer in Boulder, and the culmination, the climax of our time in Boulder was that we had to give a TED style talk to a full auditorium of friends and partners of this organization called Unreasonable Institute. And so you were drafted in as the coach to coach us up, and so we met each other then. We stayed in touch. I think I turned up on your doorstep, quite literally. Then a year later, with my girlfriend, but who would soon later become my wife, and she stayed at your house while I was doing a retreat in the Colorado mountains with Reboot with Jerry Colonna, and Jim Marsden, who is still my coach today. And you've dug me a couple of times, and yeah, it's we've been good pals for a while now.
Yeah. I always remember just you have been just one of those people that is so curious and always learning. And like even now, you running this organization, you're 12 years in, it's just like you have such a beginner mind. And it's just, and you just keep going, like you were saying earlier before we started recording, we were talking about sometimes with entrepreneurship, we just need to stay in the arena, right? It's like not pretty all the time, it's not awesome all the time, but just like hang in.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for just hanging in, and seeing what the next day will bring. There's probably a lot of voices in one's head, and voices from around you that might be like, "Your time's up," like give it up. But I think what I've learned is like if you just give it a little bit longer, you just push through a little bit of discomfort. Um, Interesting and wonderful things can occur. Um, and yeah, I think like Jim Collins, um, he lives in Boulder as well. I think Jim Collins like talks about like his research into leaders of companies, and I've seems to suggest that like the companies that really achieve the most interesting impact, and the leaders that have the biggest impact often are the leaders that just stick with the company from day zero and kind of forever. And so I feel like there's like some wisdom in that. Not to say everyone should stick with it. If something's making you miserable, or it's not enjoyable anymore, you don't have to stick with it. But it's learning to interpret what is kind of, yeah, something that's uncomfortable and difficult and potentially a source of growth, or something that has reached the end of its cycle, and that's challenging. But I guess I'm still here. I'm still doing it, and I'm glad that I'm still going, and I'm glad that at the different tricky moments I've decided to keep believing, which is my
Hmm.
word.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Well, maybe you can actually give us a little background on and the work you do, the organization you started, and then we'll talk about your word.
So our organization is focused it's an education company, and we're focused specifically on this area of social and emotional learning, promoting and improving mental health, and doing that work particularly in schools, and particularly through training teachers and school leaders. Um, that I was kind of drawn to my work partly through my own experiences of growing up in a very um, challenging school environment with lots of violence and bullying, and being a victim of bullying, and then becoming a bully, and then being a teacher in a challenging inner city school in London where one of my best students was sent to jail for murder, another one of my students was murdered. And I guess the sum of those experiences was an invitation to me to be like, well, do you want to do something about that and try and like build an organization that solves that problem? Um, and curiously, I found, or I was drawn to, or I was for reasons I maybe fully haven't understood yet. Um, I I'm building the company in Colombia in South America, which is one of the countries which is most affected by violence in recent history, just recovering from a 50-year civil conflict. And this feels like the right place to be building co-school. So yeah, that's a bit about Coast School.
Yeah. And explain how you got to Colombia, because a lot of people are looking at you and like,
Yeah,
how does this
yeah.
adorable ginger land in Colombia?
Traveling around South America and discovering a country that had a probably an unwarranted reputation for being dangerous and unsafe and violent. And when I came to Colombia, it was totally the opposite. It was great. Um, loved my first visit to Colombia. People were friendly, kind. There was a sense of optimism, and yeah, then I came back to after traveling and then working in the UK for a few years. Came back to Colombia to work with the organization Teach for Colombia, which is the same as Teach for America, to help them kind of get set up in 2012. And I thought I'd be here for 6 months, and I'm still here now. 13 years later. And there was an important experience in 2013 where I discovered my long lost godfather, another British guy called Henry, who I hadn't seen in 25 years. He popped up living in Cali, Southwest Colombia, and invited me down to Cali for the weekend. Turns out Henry had got very into plant medicine, and Henry took me on a trip into the jungle to do ayahuasca with his shaman. And yeah, after doing ayahuasca and kind of looking deep within my soul, I was pretty convinced I was ready to set up an organization in Colombia focused on our mission.
Hmm. Yeah, and we worked together a lot of times over the years in different capacities, but I feel like we didn't really formally dig you and get to your one word until like probably a few years ago. Can you share
Yeah.
a little bit about what that process was like for you and what your word is and what it means to you?
Yeah. So we actually did two digs, and I think we did a first dig that where we scraped back a few layers and
Mm,
got to a word, my word, which was connect.
mm,
Um, but then I think you being very with your heightened sense of intuition, I think speaking to me once, you were like, wait, I think we need to dig you again, or I need to go need to then this is I was participating in a kind of in a program that you're running to train speakers, and so I think we did like another dig again, and then you were like, I think your word is believe, and I was like, ah, yeah, I think that's my word. Believe um believe is, yeah, a word I think that's really important to me, and as I've continued to learn about myself, I think the word comes more and more into focus. The idea of self-belief, believing in myself, and the challenges I have around self-belief has always been there as both it's like light and a shadow for me in my life, like the lack of self-belief, which converts into a lack of self-compassion, which continues to be there, like as something that challenges me. But also when I believe in myself and when I believe in an idea, I can inspire hundreds and thousands of people to believe with me. Um, I studied theology at university, and so the idea of like exploring belief, I think was always interesting to me. And how did all these when I studied theology, I was interested in like how do religions get all these people to like believe in them and be so passionate about their cause. I didn't study theology because I was necessarily like a really strong believer in any religion, and to this day, I'd say I'm more kind of agnostic than following one religion in particular. Um, yeah, and just to finish, maybe one other thing about belief is um, I've have the interesting connections and to football, to the sport of football, and like I've chosen to follow teams which are not the most popular or successful, like Fulham in the UK or Huracan in Argentina, but actually following that, believing in those teams despite their lack of success, has actually created some really awesome things in my life, like the Global Football Foundation, the Huracan Foundation, and so on. So that's another part of belief, which I feel like I'm constantly tested on. Like, why should I keep believing in these teams? They're not bringing me any glory. But then I've
mm,
learned that they bring other treasures.
mm. Yeah, what advice do you have for people who might be struggling with believing in something or are just maybe working in some kind of realm that is just so disappointing and they don't feel like they're making an impact? How do you tap into that believe frequency?
Wow, that's not that curiously, that's not a question that I think about very much because I think I take belief kind of for granted a little bit because it's this thing for me which is kind of omnipresent. Um, um, what advice would I give? I think that um, it's important for people to remember that the construction of belief comes about through lots of small uh, actions and ideas, and not through the necessarily the need to believe in like the big idea or the final goal. Sometimes I think with goal setting we can like be like, whoa, like how am I going to believe in that? Like that's just like too hard to believe in or too far or too abstract. Like what can you do on a micro level, on a day-to-day basis to increase your belief? And belief I think comes about through momentum and through action and through doing things. You know, if you're training for a marathon, don't think too much about training for completing 26 miles, you know, on day one. Just be, can I get out there and run or walk for 5 minutes? Okay, now I know I can. Like, what's next after that? I mean, this is sounds quite cliche to me, but it's cliche because I think it's true. I think it works. Like, set it being focused on like micro actions and one step at a time instead of the abstract final goal. I think that's a way to construct belief. And belief, I think, is also connected to trust. And you know, like the what Dr. John Gottman says about trust, and Brené Brown has this like really nice way of explaining trust using the marble jar. It's like we fill up the jar one marble at a time if we want to build trust. And I think belief is pretty similar. It's like it's one marble at a time.
Hmm. I like the idea of micro beliefs, you know? Hmm. Sometimes big beliefs can be just so overwhelming, or just like you doubt it because it's almost too big, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
There's more to doubt. But when you if you can, yeah, believe in something and get it done, and then feel the impact of that, then that's, you know, it's like win the day or win the hour, you know, and
Hmm.
then look back and go, well, what did I get done today? You know, did I achieve at least one meaningful thing? Did I take a step forward? And you go, yeah, I did. And we all have a negative bias in our brains, which is constantly there, like chipping away, going, but it's a survival mechanism. It's like, but you know, you probably messed up that thing, and like that didn't go that well, and like that conversation didn't go that well, and you didn't send an email, and like you're kind of a loser. It's like you got to remember to zoom out and to try and remember what's going well and build from the bright sparks, build upon the positive and real progress that you're making.
Hmm. Can you think of one moment of truth, like this can be personal or professional, where that frequency of believe brought you back to who you are?
A moment that brought me, when belief brought me back to who I am. Um, I'm thinking like what's coming back to me is teaching in a very challenging environment in London 15 years ago, where there were, I mean, I was in a failing school, and a school that was deeply affected by violence and gang violence, and you know, students were losing their lives. One of my students lost his life age 15, outside the school gates at 4 p.m. Over a fight for a mobile phone.
Hmm.
And that's like a desperate situation, and there are many desperate situations in the world. But coming back to belief is going, well, there are 25 other or 35 other students in his classroom that I need to believe in. I need to
Mm,
believe in their potential. I need to genuinely believe that they can um, thrive and flourish. Um, because if I don't have that belief, then like what am I doing here? Like it's I'm not any good to anyone, and I'm not going to enjoy being here. So, despite or in the most desperate of situations, I think, but coming back to belief and figuring out what can I like hang my hat on here? Like, what can I believe in? Because there are certain things which are challenging and beyond my control. But like, what's in my control? What can I do? Who can I believe in? Where's the sense of possibility? And like coming back to that, I think for me as a teacher was really important. And then that's probably been pretty, there's been lots of moments like that running co-school in a country like Colombia with all of its challenges and its challenging history in its past, um, where, it's, yes, there are constantly reasons not to believe,
mm,
but there are normally many more reasons to believe. You've just got to find
mm,
them. You've got to look for them. You've got to focus effort and attention on the things which you can believe in.
mm. Yeah, beautiful message. I know you've been working hard on your speaking for almost as long as I've known you, and now you're a sought after speaker in Colombia, and I'm guessing globally as well. But what are you talking about when you're in front of these big rooms of people, and what is the message you want people to leave with?
Um, when I'm when I'm talking to people, I'd say first of all, like a reflection for me on my journey as a speaker is that um it takes time. I think it really does take time and practice to get better as a speaker. And and wherever you are today, you're going to be in a very different place in 3 or 5 years if you put the work in. And so when I think to like the speaker I am today is the result of is intimately connected to the process that we did a few years ago, I think 2021. But because I've put the time and effort, and now I've been practicing a lot. It's like every time I give a speech, like I'm learning something new, I'm tweaking something, I'm like being, well, that didn't quite work, or that didn't quite land. Um, I I want people to, when I give a talk, to connect with their own appreciation of like what a good teacher is. I talk a lot about teachers and educators, so I like to get people. I share the story of my favorite teacher, and then I ask people to think about their favorite teacher, and then we often do an activity where we kind of use a Mentimeter tool to kind of like pull together a word cloud of like the qualities of their favorite teacher. And so I like for people to feel nostalgic and connected to kind of like that idea of the qualities of their teacher. I like people to, I mean, I by telling the stories of my experience in my school in South London, I move people and shock people, and I think help people also connect with this kind of with this ridiculous paradox that occurs in education where we're so focused on the academic side and not on the human side. Um, and I I really like to finish my talks by doing an activity related to gratitude, so people can actually live an experience and actually can we do a gratitude activity, and I always participate as well, where it's like let's share gratitude for ourselves, and then share with the person next to us like why are you feeling grateful to yourself, and then also we then I get everyone to send a message of gratitude to someone else that they're feeling grateful for in that moment if they want to participate. It's not obligatory. It's only if you kind of if you're feeling it. Um, but that means that lots of people finish the talk in crying or connect to their emotions, and I guess that's kind of like the what I want. I want people to feel more human. I want people to feel more connected to themselves, connected to others, and moved and like challenged, and I want people to come away thinking, yeah, like we need to change how we educate, and like there is a we and give people like tools and ideas for how that could be, and show people
Mhm.
and let people experience it as part of a speech. So yeah, that's the some of the elements of my slinky these days. And I'm curious
Mhm.
about how many of those things were present when I did the training with you.
Yeah, I remember at the time that you were going through that training, Ted Lasso was big, and you loved that the poster, whatever he had over his door was just believe, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
thanks so much.